The Plura Cave incident. February 2014. The temperature in northern Norway was below freezing. The lakes were covered in ice, and the wind cut across the face like a blade. Still, 5 experienced divers from Finland were preparing for a mission that, to many, seemed impossible: to fully traverse Plura Cave, one of the most treacherous submerged cave systems in Europe. The team was made up of Patrik Grönqvist, Vesa Rantanen, Kai Kankanen, Jari Uusitalo, and Jari Huotarinen. All of them were trained, experienced, and highly equipped. Each carried 7 compressed air cylinders, thermal diving suits, and used guidelines, a kind of nylon thread fixed to the cave to ensure the return path. The plan was to cross 2.3 kilometers of Plura Cave to the opposite side, at the Stein-Nugelflaget system, navigating through narrow passages, deep chambers, and dangerous curves, all underwater, in total darkness. For safety reasons, they split into 2 groups. Patrik Grönqvist and Jari Huotarinen entered first, and about an hour later, the other 3 divers followed. They entered the water on February 6, 2014, around 1 p.m. The first part of the dive went as expected. They were well prepared, moving in coordinated rhythm and respecting all the rules of technical cave diving. Plura Cave, though dangerous, was familiar to them. But the final stretch held a silent trap, an area known for extremely narrow passages, tight angles, and sharp rocks that could trap a diver if equipment was misaligned. That's where the tragedy began. In the last section of the crossing, Jari Huotarinen began navigating one of the final narrow fissures. It was a sharp elbow-shaped curve with reduced height and a real risk of entrapment. Something went wrong. Patrik Grönqvist, experienced and ahead, noticed Jari Huotarinen was no longer behind him. Realizing something was wrong, he turned back to help. The passage was so tight that the water flow created counter-pressure, making it nearly impossible to retreat. The cylinders on their backs began hitting the walls, and mobility was lost by the second. Jari Huotarinen started swallowing water and slowly lost consciousness. Knowing he couldn't help and realizing he too was in danger, Patrik Grönqvist chose to move forward, completing the crossing, a decision that proved vital to his survival. About an hour after the first group entered, Vesa Rantanen, Jari Uusitalo, and Kai Kankanen entered the water. Vesa, the third diver, came across Jari Huotarinen and also had to make a choice: turn back or complete the crossing. He passed by his friend and finished the route. Jari Uusitalo was right behind. Upon seeing the situation, he panicked, became disoriented, and also ended up dying. The 5th and final diver, upon finding Jari Uusitalo's body, turned back and did not complete the traverse, returning to the starting point. 2 divers completed the journey, and the 5th diver returned to the entry. After a period of recovery, Kai Kankanen drove to where they were staying. The group contacted emergency services, and the local police were notified. Police divers entered the cave and concluded that it would be impossible to recover the bodies without risking more lives due to pressure, temperature, and extreme complexity. They returned to the surface, and it was decided that the cave would be closed, with no possibility of retrieving the bodies. Kai Kankanen and Vesa Rantanen, unwilling to leave their friends behind, planned and executed the rescue on their own, without government authorization. 2 months and 20 days after the incident, they re-entered Plura Cave, determined to bring their friends home. Despite the danger, every move was calculated to the millimeter. After more than 10 hours of diving, they successfully brought both bodies back to the surface. Jari Uusitalo and Jari Huotarinen were buried with national mourning. The international media reported the event as an act of extreme courage, but the divers themselves rejected the label of heroes. Kai Kankanen said in an interview, "I didn't go there for glory. I went there out of respect. They were our brothers, and you don't leave a brother behind." A story of courage, of loyalty, and of 2 friends who went back into hell to bring the other 2 home. The Nutty Putty Cave incident. On November 24, 2009, John Edward Jones was slowly crawling through a dark, damp passage of Nutty Putty Cave in Utah. It was just 2 days before Thanksgiving, and he was with his brother in what felt like a nostalgic reunion. Nutty Putty Cave has narrow, vertical, and confusing tunnels, with a total mapped length of about 650 meters and a depth of 43 meters. Despite being relatively small, it's extremely treacherous. John had explored the cave as a child and wanted to relive a bit of his youth before heading home. Upon entering the cave, John decided to explore one of the lesser-known crevices. When he encountered 2 splits, he chose the narrower one, believing it would lead to a new chamber. He was wrong. That passage ended in a dead end, and was only 25 centimeters wide. It was so tight that only a person's torso could barely squeeze through, and even then, with difficulty, he entered, pushing with his shoulders, feet, and steady breathing. He advanced about 6 meters and realized the space was narrowing even more. He tried to back out, but as he moved his hips to reverse, his chest became wedged against the rock. His arms had no room to assist in the movement. Each breath became harder. His chest was being crushed. And worst of all, he had inadvertently turned himself upside down, with his body stuck at a nearly 70-degree angle. Trapped head down, his body began to give in slowly to gravity. Blood started pooling in the upper part of his body. Internal pressure increased, and his organs began shutting down one by one. His face swelled. His lungs, compressed, couldn't expand properly. His heart beat rapidly, trying to keep blood flowing against gravity. It was a race against time, and John knew it. He called for his brother, who immediately went to get help. Soon, a specialized rescue team was at the cave's entrance. One of the most complex rescue operations in American history was about to begin. More than 130 rescuers were mobilized. They tried to dig a path from above. They used ropes, pulleys, tools. They built wooden braces to prevent the tunnel from collapsing. But nothing worked. The passage was so narrow that no equipment fit. No person could position themselves correctly without risking getting stuck too. Despite the pain, John remained lucid. He talked to rescuers, who were able to reach a safe distance to speak with him. One firefighter managed to hold his hand. John said he didn't want to die, that he loved his wife, that he wanted to see his daughter grow up. Then, at the most delicate moment of the operation, the pulley system gave out. One of the devices supporting the rescue structure broke irreversibly. The crevice was too unstable. When they tried to pull him out, the system failed, and John's body slid even deeper. The pain worsened. The pressure intensified. At that point, his body was already on the verge of collapse. After more than 27 hours trapped, unable to move, with his body crushed and blood pooling, John Edward Jones stopped responding. His heart couldn't take it. He died there, at the bottom of Nutty Putty Cave, fully aware of his fate, knowing no one would be able to get him out. It was a slow, painful, and lonely death. But perhaps the most macabre part came after. No subsequent attempt to remove his body succeeded. The risks were too high and could result in more deaths. So, officials made a drastic decision. Nutty Putty Cave was permanently sealed with concrete. John's body remains there to this day, trapped in the same spot where he spent nearly 30 hours. He never came out, buried alive. That cave is no longer a tourist site. It became a tomb of stone, silence, and tragedy, where a man was swallowed by his own curiosity and never returned. And in the end, 2 caves, 2 countries, 2 fates. John Edward Jones got stuck and never came out. Hari and Jari sank into the shadows of Plura and were brought back by 2 friends who refused to leave them behind. 2 true stories. 2 caves that swallow. And a reminder. Not every path has a way back. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel. The next story is already being unearthed, and it begins where this one ends. To be continued.